just started the recording, and
Okay.
we can go ahead and get started here.
Cool.
Alright, so we're working with a kind of a wacky comp here. We're kind of like running a spam comp, but then with a Doomfist and a Sombra. Alright, so the first thing I'm looking at here is, and last time we went over Moira and Ana, correct? So we didn't go over any of them.
Correct.
Alright, so then what we're going to go over here is something called Crosshair Placement. Are you familiar with the term?
Yes.
Yep. So basically, the first big major thing here that we're looking at that I'm not seeing is making sure that we're aiming head level, right? So that's of course that's gonna be a bad habit that comes from playing Ana and Moira, where you can't hit headshots on either or. So that means that you don't need to aim head level. In fact, you probably should be aiming body level because it's gonna make your shots more accurate. You're gonna hit more of them. But on any characters that can hit headshots, you want to be hitting headshots because it just does a lot more damage to hit headshots than it does to hit body shots, right? You're killing things much faster. So we want to be able to hit headshots, and to do that, we want to make sure we're aiming head level. So whenever we're swapping between these different characters, we need to give ourselves a quick reminder: we're on a different character, therefore I need to be doing this. So when you're on Ana, aim at body level. When you're on Moira, aim body level. But when you're on Zenyatta, you want to be aiming head level. Baptiste, aim head level, right? That way we can hit headshots, right? A lot easier. If we're aiming here, we have to just up and to the right or up and to the left, and that means that the more adjustment there is, right? If we are having to do this all the time, this just makes the further you have to adjust, the harder a shot that is than if we just go like this, right? Because there's a lot less adjustment, and therefore it's an easier shot, right? On top of that, that's just going to turn all of our just base default damage into headshots. Like if we're just spamming down this corridor into shields, right? Just shooting at anything, then it's hitting body shots. But if we're aiming at head level, then we just turn this corner and now we're hitting all headshots, right? Just because we're already aiming there. Right, so that's just, we want to make sure we're aiming head level now. The second step to this is just making sure we're aiming where and I haven't seen anything yet so far that would say that we haven't struggled with this, but just the second step that comes across our placement is aiming where we know people are going to be. So if you know the bot's top left, we're pre-aiming at the doorway, we can charge up a right click, so that when he turns the corner, it's very little adjustment till we get the kill. Right, we know he's on the left, so we're pre-aiming left, aiming head level, so when we turn the corner, we're already looking at his head. Right. Now these guys are on a little bit of a slope, right? So just like on a Tor, we aim a little bit lower. On a tank, we'd aim a little bit higher. We're going to aim a little bit lower on these guys, so when we turn the corner, we're pretty much already aiming at their head, right? So that we just hit much easier headshots, right? So now we take that knowledge and we come back into the game we were in, and we were on Junkertown.
Yep.
We can kind of see where instead, like, kind of where Crosshair is on this game to start off. So, like, we can just kind of see where it is on the rest of this is where I saw it. So we can just kind of see this here, right? So body level, and then you just kind of watch as it stays here. Body level, right? Body level, right? So we're just shooting a lot at this body level. That means if shield breaks and we start actually hitting her, we're hitting her body, right? Not hitting her head, which is going to be doing a lot more damage. Unless, of course, the buff goes through and Fortify takes away headshots, in which case it wouldn't make a difference. But you still want to be aiming there.
Got it. Yeah, I'm not used to playing Zenyatta, so this is super major.
Yeah, of course, it's completely different play styles, right? That's why whenever you're playing different characters, you have to constantly remind yourself that, like, kind of, I need to be doing this instead, since it's a different character, right? I kind of get that all the time when, like, I'm kind of a big all-around flex player because I have experience on, like, all the different roles, and anytime you have to go from, like, one drastically different character to another, you have to be swapping your mindset, and you have to be reminding yourself about the play style. Like, I'm positioning differently, like, because every character is gonna be positioning differently, playing differently, using abilities and ultimates differently, right? And shooting differently as well, right? So every time we're swapping characters, we need to be reminding ourselves this is how this character plays, not that way, right? Okay, with our positioning so far, I'd say we're playing pretty passive in terms of, like, shooting at stuff. keep in mind that Zenyatta is like mostly damage, right? Like if you compare Zenyatta to like a character like Ana or a character like Moira, we talked about how like Moira's 50% healing, 50% damage. Zenyatta's like it takes so little effort to heal that you're going to be damaging like 80% of the time, like 90% of the time, right? Because we just have to plop orb on something and then it's done. That's it. That's all we have to do. We can, and then trance as well, but that's the extent of our healing. Therefore, most of our what we're doing is damage, and therefore we kind of play as a DPS in how we're positioning ourselves, again, like kind of playing differently because we're on a different character. And here we're playing very passive with the angles that we're taking. So like here we kind of crouched here and spent the entire time just kind of shooting at Orisa shield, whereas for example we could have come up here and maybe shot at something else besides Orisa, right? Like any of these other guys, we could have, like, from here we could maybe see any of the guys like along here if they peek out there. That's just an option to like maybe see get a pick on the Baptiste or the Zenyatta or the McCree if he peeks around, right? This is just another angle we could take, but then we're also just kind of playing real passive almost, like with the angle that we're taking, where the only thing we can see here is the Orisa, right? That's it. Then we move forwards a tiny little bit, and again the only thing we can see, like we're not able to see much from here. Right, and then we're kind of sitting in the back, and then the only thing we can see here is the Sigma and the McCree, right? So again, very limited line of sight. So just keep in mind that you can play a little bit more aggressive with your positioning. Now, I don't want that to go up to a 100, right? I don't want you to, like, right now, probably say we're like just a little too passive. Maybe we're like, if we're putting it on a scale, we'd put it at like you're on 40% on the scale,
Mm-hmm.
right? I don't want you
Mm-hmm.
to all of a sudden take that and dial you up to 100 or dial you up to 90 or anything like that. I want you to just dial it up to 50 or 60.
Mm.
But right now we're just a little too passive, right? So we're not able to
Yeah.
actively shoot at things this way.
I think I keep hearing so much about how low HP he is, so I'm a little worried about that, or his
Survivability is
hitbox
low.
and
Yeah,
right.
I wouldn't say that he's necessarily the things that make him easy to kill are that he has no mobility and no self healing or protection besides his like fragging potential. The only thing he can do to protect himself is just kill things, but he doesn't, like, for example, Ana has nade and sleep, Lucio has speed to get away, Baptiste has jump, Moira has fade, right? All these other characters like Zenyatta, I think is the only character in the game without one or the other, right? Without some form of mobility or some form of defensive ability, right? He's the only character in the game. Um, yeah, like if you think of
That's
anything
true.
else, pretty much any other character has something. So Zenyatta's just therefore the easiest target like to kill, and that means that you do have to be safe with your positioning, but it doesn't mean that you have to be passive with your positioning. There are ways to be aggressive while still being safe. Like for example here, I probably say with our positioning we're just a little bit far back here. We could be positioned up here right next to the tanks and be a lot closer and therefore be a lot easier to hit shots, while also being super safe here because we are behind behind two shields, right? Behind two tanks, and then we also have the corner here if we need to. Here, in fact, is actually probably even worse positioning because we're further away. We don't have any. We're not using the shields, and we're also far away from the cover we're using is cart here, whereas we probably should just be using, like, the right side cover. So you can be aggressive while also being safe. Um, so you just don't want to sacrifice productivity for survivability.
Got it.
A lot more body shots. Right, I'm not gonna bring that up, but I just want to I'm sorry, I'm not gonna keep harping on that, but I'm just gonna say right off the bat that is a big thing, and it's looking like it's just gonna continue on throughout the whole
Mhm.
thing. So just keep in mind you really want to change that, and that's gonna be a big thing to improve on in terms of mechanics.
Yep.
We're crouching a lot of the time. Is there a reason why we're crouching like so constantly?
Nope. I don't know.
We're kind of like just walking around crouched. Like you can
I
see it.
didn't.
We're kind of like
Oh.
uh see, like we're crouched there, right? It's hard to tell because it's hard to tell, like, to see when Zenyatta's crouched, but it totally looks like we're going up and down because you can kind of see the animation of us going into it. Like here, look how slowly we're moving and we're kind of low to the ground, and then we uncrouch and then we crouch back down, and then
I
we're
need
still
to
crouching,
check
we
my
uncrouch.
key bindings. I don't usually play Zen,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, I'll double check that. I
So do
do,
you
now
have
that
the
you say it, I
yeah
feel it every now and again. It's in the movement where it feels sluggish.
yeah.
I must be crouching.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
definitely recommend getting rid of that because
Mm.
crouching is you're not gonna want to stay crouched because that's just gonna make like that's the equivalent of like scoping in on Ana, right? You know when you scope in on Ana, it makes it super easy for you to get shot at, right? And you're super slow, and it means that you're just gonna get killed a lot easier. So that's kind of like the same thing on Zenyatta. Now you can crouch spam, and that's different because now you're not getting like as much of the reduced mobility, but you're making your head hit harder to hit. Whereas here we're just kind of sitting still, which is just gonna make us an easier target to kill. So just that's just something to keep an eye on. That's kind of that's a first for me. I've never seen anybody do that.
I, yeah. Also, I guess I'm just have this perception that he's supposed to play very far back.
Yeah, okay. So I would get rid of
Mm.
that perception.
Okay.
So we're at 215. We'll just go to the practice range here real quick. Zenyatta is a mid-range character. I'd probably say that the
Okay.
only true long range character in the game is Widowmaker and Ana potentially as well, but she also likes to. She has reasons why she likes to be closer. She can play long ranges, just like Widowmaker, except for she wants to be closer to be able to land sleeps and nades. But the only true long range character in the game is Widow because she's the only character who prefers a long distance. Whereas a character like Zenyatta, right? Yes, he is capable of playing at a long distance. Like we can hit headshots and kill him the exact same from here, except for a couple different things. We don't prefer this distance because it's going to be very, very difficult to hit that headshot, right? When we're further away, they're smaller, right? The further away we get, the smaller the enemy is. So he's really tiny right there. But then if a bot comes closer to us here, he's going to be very massive on our screen, right? So the closer you are, therefore that makes the shots easier to hit because it's a bigger target to hit. The other thing is that we don't have a scope from this distance, and we don't have a lowered sensitivity from this distance. So yes, Zenyatta is capable of playing long distances, but he does not prefer long distances because when we're playing at this far range, it's just going to be very inaccurate to be hitting shots, right?
Mm.
So now, on the flip side, Zenyatta most certainly does not prefer close range. Like he can duel something if something gets on top of him. Like there's nothing technically that like from any character that like means that you I guess like Widowmaker is like the exception, like in Ash, or like where you want to like his damage does not change from close range to there. It's just the fact that there's a ton of other characters in the game that just benefit from being closer to him, right? Like think Reaper, Mei, Ryan, right? Any brawl character or character that like has abilities that work at a close range are just gonna have more value at that range. So where we want to be positioning on Zenyatta is a mid range, right? We have mid range positioning, so we're positioning from like here to like here ish, right? Yeah, that's a real ish, right? Just
Mm-hmm.
you're very versatile. You can play whatever range you need to play at, but whenever it's an option and up to you, whereas like in that last game that we're watching, it most certainly
Mm-hmm.
was up to you. Like you could have changed your position anytime you wanted to. So whenever it's an option, you're trying to play within this distance, whereas where we were playing was kind of like more past this distance, and we're kind of playing at this range from people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we just want to make sure we're closer. On top of that, also notice that you can't apply orbs from this range.
Right.
I cannot press E until I'm within 60 meters. I believe this is 60. Is this 60 or 50? Actually, 40 meters. My bad. I just completely got that wrong. So I can't apply orb until I'm within 40 meters, which means that that's gonna go off. Or right, I can't press it from here. Same with teammates. All right, well, teammates usually we're gonna be a lot closer to, but same thing with teammates
Mm-hmm.
is the distance from here. I cannot apply it to that guy. Right, I'm spamming the button. No, I can't on that guy. Right,
Mm-hmm.
so that's all reasons why Zenyatta just prefers a mid range. Now, it's okay for you to play long range, especially like for example, like if we're walking back from spawn, right, or we're walking into a fight, then this is fine because we have to get there anyways to start off. So we do that, but then we want to move up into this better position whenever it's an option.
Totally makes sense.
All right. And then it's kind of like the same thing with Ana, where like Ana is capable, very very capable of playing at a long range because she has a scope, she has a lowered sensitivity, she doesn't have any fall off. But the reason why she might not prefer a long range over a short range is because, or a mid range, is because it's going to be easier to land abilities at a mid range.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's get back to where we were. We were like 2 minutes in.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so skippy skip.
My ultimate is charging.
All right, so just in general as a team here, I probably, this, you can always relate to this to team, but we should
Mm-hmm.
probably be taking space and positioning up here, as
Mm-hmm.
positioning up here in between fights is going to give us the two major things. First off, high ground's great, right? Tons of reasons why high ground's great. I think you get that. You're a high level player. High ground's fantastic. But an additional thing to that is when we have high ground, they don't have high ground, right? When we
Mm-hmm.
take control of high ground, it rips high ground away from them. So right up here, this is basically a free high ground for them because all the stairways are in their direction. If we just give it to them for free, we're just giving them a free advantage. If instead, for example, we leave let's say we just leave Mercy on cart, right? Then we have an additional 5 people up here on the high ground, and we control high ground, or at least contest high ground, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
Mercy can just fly up to us whenever she needs to, right? And then everyone else is up there. So that's just a team thing. On top of that, keep in mind that you never really need more than one person on cart at a time, besides right up until you're about to cap, right? Um,
Right.
because it's going no matter what, you need to win 2 fights. Now, you might need to win less if you get stagger kills, or you might need to win more if you lose fights, right? But in general, if you need to win 2 fights in a row to get it to the end here, right? The first fight
Mm-hmm.
happens around this bend around here somewhere. The second fight ends around is around this bend over here, right?
Right.
Um, so basically, the amount of people you have on cart is not going to change that fact. You're 1 person or 3 people, it's still going to be 2 fights. So you can put 3 people on cart, for example, if you're trying to like cap it before they're able to touch, right? You think that maybe you can get it in before they're able to get on. That's an
Mm-hmm.
option, but just make the assumption that you're probably going to need 2 fights anyways, and we don't need to be on cart if we have somebody else on cart, right?
So our Arissa should be pushing up, or
Yes.
at least the Sigma.
Yep, I
Yeah.
probably say that here. I I probably say Mercy would be best here because to let the DPS go and do whatever they need to do.
Mm-hmm.
Mercy can sit on cart because she has mobility and can just get up to you guys on the high ground very easily. The other options would be the Sombra and the Doomfist, who can also do that, but they need to use abilities and they want to set up and do things other places. So Mercy would probably be the best one who can just sit on cart where you, Sigma, and Orisa can rotate up to the high ground because you guys are all the slow guys who can't get up the high ground.
Got
Right?
it.
So that's just some team
That's
slash
good.
you stuff. Right, because then here we're going to see that they come out, get the high ground for free, right, and then now they just have a free high ground advantage. Whereas before we could have, they would have still been able to walk up there, but it would have at least been contested. So it rather than basically us just giving it to them for free, it would have been at least us giving us a chance of having it.
Absolutely.
All right, so I'm gonna pay attention to our orbs now because I haven't paid attention to them very much so far.
Yeah, the discords is what I'm trying to pay attention to, and I think I'm trying to focus on the tanks.
With the discords, yep. So
Mm.
basically, with your discords, like pretty much how it works is you're just, if your team is calling like a target, you're gonna try to get that discord on that target, right? So just keep your ears open and listen. You can also, if your team wanted to make you the target caller, right? This is a part of like of a comm structure like we talked about last time, is target
Mm-hmm.
calling and saying we're shooting at this thing, right? That kills them faster. It means you can move from one thing to the next. Things that die faster means they don't get healing, they can't get away. It secures the kill. So you can be the target caller. Like I did that sometimes back when I played Zenyatta. It wasn't all the time. Usually supports aren't target calling because like on Ana it's not very effective to do it because you're not
Mm-hmm.
shooting at things. But other than that, you can just listen to the person that you're that's talking, you can echo call. You can, like, if let's say for example you have Sigma here who's calling McCree, right? He's going Cree 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 Cree. You can say Cree 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 to like
Mhm.
emphasize the point while also discording McCree, right? So you just
Got
want to
it.
make sure you're listening and being on the same page as your team. But besides that, yeah, you can also swap it to things that you individually are shooting at. That's also not like anytime you are shooting at something, they should almost certainly be discorded, right? There's really no reason to ever not have a Discord on the thing that you're shooting at. And then finally, I don't think that other than that, there's very much of a Discord priority. I think having it on tank, yeah, usually is going to be a pretty good idea.
Okay.
Unless you're shooting at something else. Now heal. Now we'll pay attention to like kind of we're using the heals. So far, it looks like we just have it on tanks here, so that's good.
Gaze into the iris.
The Mercy and I seem to be going after the same people here.
I don't. That's not too much of a problem because that just
Okay.
heals them. That just heals them up faster and means that you can
Got
move
it.
on to other things. So it's not usually too much of a problem that would be overlapping.
Mhm.
All right, so here we just like kind of reapply orbs like 4 times. So we place orb on her, and then we shoot a bit, and then we apply orb on Sigma, and then we apply it on Doomfist, and then we apply it on Sigma. Okay, so um, keep in mind with your healing orbs that basically for the most part we're just leaving them on tanks, and then if something else, or like the main tank, usually we're just plopping it on the main tank, and then if something else needs healing, we give it to them, right? Or if the fight's done, you can
Mhm.
give it to something else. But other than that, basically the main tank acts as our default target because they're the thing that's going to be taking the most damage. Therefore, they're going to benefit the most from it. You're going to get the most ult charge off of it. And it also, when you just leave it on something, it gives you more time to be able to shoot at things. Rather than going swap, 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 right? The only times you should be swapping is when people need it. Now, Doomfist did need it, but then I don't think that we needed to necessarily swap it back to Sigma after that point. So that's just
Right.
something to keep an eye out for. The other thing here is let's look at trance usage. So we trance. Where do we trance? So they MP. Okay, we see Arissa's critical and we trance. Um, so they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, okay, and they're gonna have that as well. All right, so I'm just thinking through what they're gonna have
Mhm.
here. That's okay, though I think we potentially just lose to the Sigma as immediately afterwards. Okay, so he gets hacked out of it. We die to the High Noon. Um, yeah, you just got to be careful when using trance.
Mhm.
We're most of the time we're gonna try to save it for very powerful abilities. Now, they're the only reason why I would not save it for the Sigma ult is because of the fact that they were comboing Sigma High Noon. That's they had Sigma, they had High Noon. If you guys have you guys been keeping up the ult tracking and comms and whatever since
We're
like
trying.
trying to.
We're trying.
Mm,
We have a lot of vocal people, so
yeah.
it's, as you know,
Yep.
but we're gonna work on that.
It gets real cluttered. Yeah. You
Mhm.
just want to make sure that we're like basically people should in between fights unless it's like absolutely critical information. Um, people should basically just be quiet when they're talking, right? Shut up, like not
Mhm.
nobody should be talking besides those two people
Mhm.
who are doing the comms, because if you're just saying like things that aren't insanely important, then you're cluttering up comms and it makes it difficult for the planning to happen, which we discussed last time was so important. Now here, if we're ult tracking and planning and whatever, we know that they have Sigma Flux High Noon, in which case Trance isn't going to do anything against that. So honestly, it wasn't terrible to use it for something else if we knew that that was the combo they were going for. But they also have Blossom and like they have a ton of ults, so I think that was fine. It wasn't. I don't think it
Mhm.
was like it's usually very very difficult to discern what to go for in that instance when they have so much. So I think that wasn't a bad ult. But
Got it.
the thing that we did have wrong here was the fact that we ended our ult out in the open. At the very end of our ult, we always want to be getting to safety, because as soon as we're invincible in our ult, but at the very end of it, we need to use the last second or two to just make your way to cover. So for example, if we used the last second or two, we could have made our way inside of here, right? Now this is, we talked, you get it, right? Good positioning is the usage of cover, bad positioning is the absence of cover. Over here, we're only able to get high nooned because we're out in the open, right? That's why we die.
True. Oh, that's a big note. Yep.
Yep. So we just want to make sure at the very end of our trance that we're looking to get to safety, as that results in our death. And then if we didn't die, then we would be, instead of it being a 2v3, it would be a 4v2, which just puts us at much better odds, right? So let's keep going. Do they win is the question. Down 1, down 2. Unfortunate. I think that's lost.
How does Zen get to his ult faster? What are the factors there?
Now Discord does not give ult charge. Healing does give ult charge. Damage does ult. So the only two things that you're getting ult charge off of are your healing orb and your shooting at stuff. So if you're trying to get your ult as fast as possible, that means you need to be basically, the big one is just shooting at stuff, because you're not gonna be too usually, as long as you're just have your orbs in the general right direction, you're not gonna be too inefficient with your orbs, but you can definitely be inefficient with the amount of time you're shooting at stuff. So if you're trying to get your ult faster, you basically need to be shooting at things more often, right?
Okay.
So yeah, as long as here, like, we just default it back to Orisa as soon as it's off of McCree, so that way we just have it on the McCree. Here we need to be spamming. We're just kind of sitting around. In general, that's just something I would get really used to, is that Zenyatta is a DPS character, right? He needs to be shooting almost constantly. Anytime we cannot actively see something, we are charging up right clicks. Anytime we can see something, we are left clicking, right? So when we are pushing, when we're right here and we're pushing into the fight and we can't see anything, we're right clicking. Anything we're backing up and maybe we're thinking something's chasing us, we're right clicking. Anytime we're ducking around the corner because we're low, or we're just ducking around the corner for the sake of it, then we're right clicking to charge up a shot, because this means that when we turn the corner, we can burst Zen down to 0 instantaneously. But when we can already see them, left clicking is going to be a more consistent, efficient source of damage. So far, I haven't seen many right clicks, and we just want to make sure that's happening more often. Now, there's not going to be an exact number, but it's kind of like 50-50. I wouldn't take that exactly, because it's going to be different in every comp and every situation. But just keep in mind that right now it's definitely not anywhere close to 50-50. We're using it a lot less than we should be. So just keep in mind that we should be right clicking right now in this instant when we can't see stuff. But then when we could see stuff, we should have just been left clicking to spam damage in, right? Okay. Healing orbs on Sombra should probably be defaulted back to Orisa, because she's going to be taking the most damage out of anything on our team, because she's the main tank, right? We talked about that before. I'm not going to, I already got my stuff. I already talked about the orbs, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that anymore. Okay, that swap from Discord from Orisa to Sigma probably wasn't too necessary there. So let's see, so Orisa, we kind of swapped it from Orisa to Sigma when, like, paying attention here. Sigma's closer to cover, Orisa is lower health, right? So Orisa's just a better target to keep it on. So just make sure we're not swapping them unnecessarily. It seems like sometimes we're just kind of going orb, right? When you don't necessarily need to swap it around that much. It's just something you swap around when you need to swap it around.
Got it.
All right.
I do swap it around a lot, because my mindset is, I'm topping off. Just.
Yep. And usually, like, that's something you do in between fights, basically. Other than that, it's not gonna, like, or if you have just like an opportunity for it. Other than that, we're focusing a lot more on damage.
Got it.
Right. So like there probably wasn't necessarily on, like, notice, like, here, like, we're swapping around a lot on, like, Mercy wasn't necessary. Then we swapped to the Sombra, which, like, maybe it's fine because Sombra's down a little bit, but then we swap it to Sigma, who isn't needing it, right? So, honestly, it could go, you could put it on Orisa or Sigma. Both of those are fine. So honestly, putting it back on Sigma's completely fine there, but it just kind of, the fact that we swapped it to Sombra for like half a second was just wasted time.
Right? And then the Mercy, right?
Yep.
Got it.
More body shots. Crouching. Alright, so skippity skip. All right, so in terms, I don't think we've died very much. We've died once. Did we die twice?
Once.
Once, yeah. Okay, so we have a very very high survival rate right now. Last time, no, okay, wait. So I don't have notes here, so I need to look at. What was? Do you remember what kind of like the main points we were looking at last time were? Like if you remember like the order.
Definitely awareness and positioning.
Okay. Okay, and then what do you remember what the order was for maybe the other three or no?
No,
No. Okay. So
I don't.
I think your Ana ability usage would have been higher as well. So yeah, in general, so just so far as a quick strengths and weaknesses, we're going to put. Let's see what are the ordering on Zenyatta here. Um, I've only seen one ult. I'd like to see more ults before I place that anywhere. Ability usage is looking like it's kind of in the medium. I don't think it's like super insanely terrible for you right now with how you're using it, but I definitely do think it needs work. Awareness honestly hasn't seemed too terrible. I think a lot of this so far is coming down to play style. Is a big one, that a category I don't usually use play style, but a lot of it's coming down to play style right now of like we're spending a lot of time doing the wrong things. So we need to be positioning Zenyatta better, like basically just a lot of Zenyatta stuff. So these it kind of draws from a lot of these different categories. Like so you have in Zenyatta's playstyle, you have his difference in mechanics. So we're hitting headshots. In his playstyle, we have a difference in our positioning. So we're making sure at medium distance. We have a difference in our ability usage. We're not just constantly healing. We're just plopping it on stuff and then healing if we need to. We have a difference. It's a different ultimate, right? So that's just a lot of playstyle stuff. So that's looking kind of like the number one thing right now.
Yeah.
Is just we don't we need to get used to Zenyatta as a character, right, and how he operates. Then awareness, honestly, I don't think it's been too terrible so far. Like we haven't made any like mistakes in terms of not watching kill feed or not watching our team or the enemy team. And then mechanics I probably would say is a little bit higher here because there's a lot of times where we're not really doing very much, so we're playing a little too passive, so that comes in on actions per minute. Is I don't know if we talked about that last time, but that's just making sure we're doing more things all the time, we're being efficient. Whereas here there's a lot of times where we just aren't really doing much, right? And then we need to get used to the difference between left click and right click, and then we also need to get used to hitting headshots. So I'd probably put mechanics at kind of like number 2 here. And then positioning probably comes in at like number 3. And then I need to see more for the others.
Okay.
All right.
Gaze into the iris.
Okay, see a lot of just so here we can see there's just a lot of not shooting at stuff, right? Zenyatta should basically almost constantly be shooting. So 7, we're at 7. Or sorry, was that 7? I misread that and I forgot what number it was. So we'll find it when we go back. Zenyatta should almost constantly be shooting, and keep in mind you can be shooting while applying orbs, right? We can be shoot, orb, shoot, right? Look how little that delay is, right? We'll just do that again for you. So shoot, orb, shoot, orb, short. Like we can like just walk in front of them while we continue to shoot, or we can just glance at them for half a second, right? We can go orb, shoot, right? It does not take very much time. Right, but instead, kind of we'll go back and look at it, but we kind of like are going orb, Discord,
Yeah.
orb, right, without any, and then we go shoot, right? It's very little shooting, and you can kind of see it in your gameplay, but we should just almost constantly be shooting. You can do the same thing with Discord, is you can do it pretty much as you're shooting, right? We can just hold down the button, even while we can even do it while we're in the, actually, right at the end of your right clicks there, so so yeah, you can send it right in after right click. So like we just be spamming it in there, so it goes in right after right clicks launch. We can also probably you might want to launch it before you charge up a right click, right, if possible. But it's not always gonna be an option. Usually it's not gonna be an option because like we said, you're right clicking when you can't see people.
Right.
So yeah, we just want to make sure we're constantly doing stuff because we go back here and look at the ground. And we're not like we're just gonna notice that we're not really doing anything besides loading.
Compared to what you're talking about, for sure, we're not.
All right, so we're at like where are we here?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're a little bit back past it. Okay, so we're at like 5:30. All right. So you just notice we come into this fight, we could be okay. So here, right now, we could be spamming shields, Okay,
Hmm.
charging up
Yep.
right click, charging up right click. Okay, now this is time to me Orb McCree, right? Charging up right click, charging up right click. Okay, shooting, 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 shooting. There's stuff in the there's stuff in our face we can shoot right now. We can shoot at Baptiste, we can shoot at the shields, we can shoot at Orisa, Sigma, right? But we go Orb, and then we go Orb, and then we go Orb, and then we go Orb, right? And then we shoot, right? And now this is fine. We're actually shooting now, right? But then we go Orb, and we go Orb, and then we start shooting again. Oh, but then we shoot once, and then we go back to Orb, right? So you can just see how it's a lot less efficient, right?
Yeah.
The actions per minute is a lot lower. We're
Hmm.
not doing as much as we could be doing, as if we're just constantly shooting, right? So just try to get used to shoot, 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 and then Orb is coming in between them, right? So while shooting is just kind of coming out as a spam thing. We're not most
Mm.
of the time, like unless we're needing to. A lot of it's not shouldn't take a ton of brain power. Therefore, our brain power should be put into our orbs, right? When it comes to like, it's the same thing as like Ana, like we talked about before, is when you're just healing, most of your brain power shouldn't be going into the healing. Most of your brain power should be like, unless you're trying needing to hit like a really clutch shot, or you're
Hmm.
you have somebody on top of you and you need to win a duel, then you're putting effort into your mechanics. But if you're just kind of sitting there spamming at like a shield or spamming at a tank to heal them or anything that's super easy to hit, most of your attention can be put onto your abilities and your
Hmm.
surroundings and your awareness and your positioning, right? That's where your brain power is going into. It's the same thing here. When we're just spamming, we should just be like default spam, like kind of just passively shooting into the shields and the tanks on the main line, and then if
Hmm.
we need to hit a more mechanical shot, then we're thinking about our shots. But in the meantime, orbs just we're thinking about our orbs and really fastly doing them. Here, like we're like not shooting at all, right? That's just the big thing.
Right. It's a totally different mindset what you're talking about.
Yep,
I'm
exactly. Which
think.
kind of comes in a play style thing, like we're talking about
Yeah.
as well.
I'm glad we worked on Zen first versus Fabric.
Yep.
My ultimate ability is ready.
Whew. That was a close one. Oh, never mind. We died anyways. All right. So just make sure it doesn't seem like we peak for any necessary reason. Like
Mm-mm.
we when we peak
Um,
here. Oh, I guess like it. I guess we just have to be a little slightly carefuler that we're not peeking the doorway. That we're just like purposefully putting ourselves on the left side here, unless we have
Yeah.
a reason to peek the doorway. Like we weren't like we didn't have like what we could have been doing was maybe like charging up a right click to like peek and fire and then back up or something like that, or we could have been peeking to see what was going on or something like that. But we didn't seem to have a purpose when we peeked, which just means you
Mhm.
shouldn't be peeking, right?
Mhm.
So instead, just stay further left because then that results in a death, and then that means that your team is going in down a person, and means that they're probably very likely to lose the fight here.
Overconfidence is a
Also,
flimsy
Mercy
The hop.
probably could have
Mhm.
rezzed that pretty easily.
Mhm.
So maybe that's something you can communicate if you know that you're in a safe spot and your Mercy has time for it. You can just like give her a quick reminder, say, "Come rest me," right? Something like that.
Okay.
experience tranquility.
Oh, awareness.
Yeah.
Unless we maybe that was like a fat finger.
I
I can't
think it
tell.
was a fat finger, and I think it was I was panicking that I wasn't with the team in a fight. Yeah. For
Okay, so like
so.
maybe like a mix of like you had like a half a second of panic where you just
Yeah.
accidentally pressed the button. All right, so yep, just want to
Yeah.
make sure we're paying attention to kill feed, paying attention to what's
Mm.
happening, because then we obviously see in the situation that 6v1 is is a very one fight, right? So just try to do our
Yeah.
best to pay attention to our environment, try to take panic out of the equation, right? I know that the
Mhm.
tournaments can get pretty intense, but when we're panicking, when we're investing a ton into it and we panic, you inherently do worse, right? So what we can do is put take out that kind of negative investment where we're just kind of invested so much that we're panicking, right? You can still get a like have fun while playing the game without
Mm-hmm.
being so invested that if you mess up anything, it's life or death, right? You just want to take that intensity out of it so that you're performing better while also still getting the benefit of the dopamine rush when you hit something in the head or you win their
Mm-hmm.
game or anything like that, right? So that's just kind of mentality stuff, is like try not to panic by putting less importance on the game, which most of the time you'll still get good benefits, or like the reason why you play is for entertainment, right? You're still gonna get
Right.
entertained even if you're playing the game like that, right?
Right. Yep.
Like I'm a very competitive guy, but I still needed to kind of like tone down it a tiny little bit so that I wouldn't like, because there's a level where competitiveness gets in the way, because if I'm
Mm-hmm.
so insanely competitive that if I lose, it's a big deal, whereas it should not
Mm-hmm.
be a big deal. If it's not a big deal, then I move on, I learn from my mistakes, I do better next
Mm-hmm.
time, I don't panic as much. But if I'm putting
Mm-hmm.
so much into it, then it leads to a lot worse results.
I
All right.
agree. I could totally see that.
Right, so charging up right clicks, right, shooting at
Mm-hmm.
stuff, shooting, shoot, shoot. Okay, shooting, shooting, shooting. Good Discord. Sitting really, really far back here, so
Yeah.
preferably we'd be slightly closer. So like just examples of positioning, right? We can be up on this corner and use this. We could be,
Mm-hmm.
sitting over here. This gives us access to a health pack. This gives us access to an off angle to shoot through if we wanted to. We have this room as cover, right? So this one probably would be the best positioning we could be in. On top of that, it's closer to the fight than back there is, which means easier shots and better, also a better angle on the guys who are hiding in that room over there, right? So just a little bit positioning again. All right,
Yeah, I'm too
and
far
then
back. I see.
I don't have like it just popped into my mind. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't see anything that like made me think of it. But have you adjusted your sensitivity on your orbs yet?
I think I took it down to 80
Okay. You might
on
want to
both.
lower that slightly more.
Oh, okay.
Like usually it's like 50 to 70 ish would be a good range to have it out at, whatever you're like most comfortable with your mechanical skill. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but in a comp like this, it's just gonna allow you to pick and choose what you have orbs on a lot better and more efficiently. 80
Cool.
80 can still be a little bit high. It's not
Mm-hmm.
80 still better than 100, but you might want to lower just slightly more.
That's cool. Okay.
All right.
You have a lot to work on here. This is
Yep.
good, really awesome information.
Yep, and it's great for me too because I love when sessions are easy.
Okay,
and that
good.
sometimes I have to like really rack my brain and go, what the heck is this person even need to work on? Because sometimes they could like because you could have two people at diamond doing like playing on the same level, but one person just have much more obvious mistakes than the other person.
Mm-hmm.
So that sometimes they're just more hard, like they're harder even if they're at the same rank.
Yeah.
All right. So here to start out, for example, this is how you get more ult charge, is by like as soon as the door's opening, where we have a right click charged and we
Mm.
we're shooting, for example, like here we can like do this and we can fire off a right click into spawn. We could even be over here, right, and fire a right click off into spawn, and then we just constantly be shooting stuff as they're walking out. But kind of notice how like instead we're just kind of sitting back,
Yep.
no shooting, sitting back, right? This is just, and then that means that the people who are shooting that stuff just are already starting off at more ult charge. Like, let's say by the time we start shooting at something, let's just pause it real quick. So
Mm-hmm.
we go shoot. Okay, so the first time we're shooting at stuff, we already have people at 10, like the max is of 10, right?
Yep.
Somebody at 10, 9, right? In comparison, we're at 3, right? So it's just the
Mm-hmm.
difference in like ult charge that can make a big difference. Especially when you're trying to do a race against the clock against big ults. Like for example, they're on an EMP and a Flux, which are two very insanely powerful ultimates, and those are ults that probably, especially EMP, like at the Flux high noon, you probably Trans isn't gonna do anything against because they're just gonna be able to one tap you anyways. But an EMP,
Mm-hmm.
right? Trancing that is going to be an insane thing to do. But if she is charging it faster than you, which her like automatically her charge rate is just higher than yours, if she's getting
Mhm.
ahead of you, then that off puts it the entire game, right? So we just need to be getting more ult charge out to start off by shooting at stuff, spamming out the door, okay? More aiming at the floor.
Yeah.
Right.
What sensitivity do you recommend just in general, like within the game? Like
What are you currently at?
I think I'm at 420 and on my mouse is 800 DPI.
Okay, and what size mouse pad do you have? Do you have like a just I don't need anything specific. Just like do you have a tiny little one or do you have a big mouse pad?
It's like a 13-inch
All right,
wide one,
so a big one,
standard.
right?
Yeah.
Um, that's completely fine. That's literally 0.3 off of my exact
Uh,
sensitivity in DPI. I have a 4.5 by 800, so that's
okay.
perfectly fine. Um, how would you say that you use your like in terms of aim style?
Mhm.
Do you do a purely wrist aiming? Do you do a purely arm aiming, or do you do a mix between arm and wrist?
A mix.
Mix. Okay, that's good.
Mhm.
That's how you should be doing it. If you there,
Mhm.
it's almost it's probably real bad if you're doing only arm aiming, and then if you're wrist aiming only with that low of a sensitivity, that'd be bad as well. Um,
Mhm.
so at what points are you wrist aiming over arm aiming?
I think when I'm sniping, I'm definitely in the wrist
All right, perfect.
on Ana. Mhm.
That's exactly how it should be. Or not
Okay.
necessarily always sniping, but just anytime you're trying to hit
Right.
something far away or you're
Yeah.
trying to get precision.
Cool.
If you're just walking around normally or you're something's closer to you, then you're using your whole arm because you can
Right.
travel further distances. But if you're trying to like, for example, from here to the tanks, right? If we're just spamming in there, we might want to like set our wrist down because that's going to give us some more precision when it comes to aiming. So honestly, you're doing
Mhm.
like that. That's all perfect answers. You don't seem to
Mhm.
have anything wrong. And the big thing I'd focus on is crosshair placement and just also
Yeah.
practicing your aim and making sure we're hitting shots and headshots. And in general, shooting more because when we shoot more, we're going to get better at shooting.
Love. Okay.
All right. Here we're in some pretty poor positioning. So here
Yeah.
we've probably we rotated right side, which I probably would not recommend. We probably just
Mhm.
sitting left side's fine because we can just sit on our
Mhm.
tanks, right? Have shields, have them in front of us, and then have pretty much the same angles. But here
Mhm.
we go right side, and then what happens is because we go right side, we're out. There's a lot less cover, and we're out in the open. And then this
Mhm.
means that we get forced off, right? So this initial positioning forces us into even worse positioning because now we're on the low
Mhm.
ground. And then from here, we can't really shoot it very much. And if we are shooting it
Yep.
much, then we're out in the open without shields because we're like, if we're, for example, here we could be shooting, but there's no shields or cover anywhere here, right? Um, so this just kind of forces us into a bad spot where we should probably be on high ground. I would probably even like as soon as we like, I'd probably just like re-rotate to high ground. So like as soon as
I
I
should
drop, I would
have.
just like just keep walking around and get back up there.
I remember that. I was like, but I panicked
Yep.
again.
Yeah. The only time you would not do that is if the fight was happening. The fight is not happening
Mm.
right now. Like this is what you call the poke phase of the fight. The
Mhm.
when the tanks are like right on top of each other or picks are going in each direction, that's pretty much where the fight has started. At this point, we're just kind of going pew pew at each other. We're at the
Mhm.
poke phase. The fight has not started, therefore we can rotate. If the fight had started, we probably should have just sat main, right?
Got it.
So we do rotate. It's just slightly late. But
Yeah.
oh, and then we choose to stay to and then we go back up.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought they were gonna come down.
So which they should at some point here be dropping that. That would be a good idea for
Mhm.
them. Um, just as a quick fun fact, in case you were not aware, but if you are, then it'll take like 2 seconds here. You can walk
Mhm.
along this edge here. Um, with like all along like from here to here and then all the way around here as well, so you can enter that from this or this on the stairway, and then this for this the main benefit you'd get from this is basically winning duels. So for example, let's say what are they on? They're on Sambar McCree. Let's say like McCree decided to like come around here to the right side to like get on you guys. If we like
Mhm.
were predicting that, or we knew it was going to happen or something like that, we could just like real quickly like peek out the top. He's not expecting this because we're like basically flying, and this is not a spot that people usually expect, and therefore we have the surprise advantage. We can just kind of go pew pew, or like even we can wait till he turns the corner and then we can get him. So it's just it acts as a really big surprise advantage. And the second thing is like on top of that, if we're just like kind of positioning near this, if
Oh, wow.
it's ever like a second, basically if we ever don't know the McCree's over there, then that's just gonna make it harder for him to even see us or know where we're there, and it gives us more time to react to him, right?
That's
So
big.
it's just
Yeah.
an idea. On top of that, on this point as well, are you aware of how to climb up here on these robots?
I try every time, and occasionally I'm successful. Yeah.
All right. Usually it's just you hop on this one is super simple, right? You hop on this left leg, you
Uh-huh.
climb all the way up to the top here, you jump on this whatever this is, right? The
Mhm.
wires, and then from there you're good. You're up. You just walk around to the right, and you're up on top.
Uh,
This this one is slightly harder, but it's still decently easy once you get used to it. Is you're just hopping on this leg to start off, okay? Then you
mhm.
from there you hop onto this like I think it's one of either this thing or this thing right here,
Mhm.
this, and then from there you hop onto this little bar, and then from there you can hop over here, or you can even hop on top of this thing and then hop over.
Mhm.
I think it either or works, and then
Mhm.
again you're up. Right, that's just some positional tips
That's a
here,
good
and
one.
that gets you to high
I'll
ground really easily on any character. All right.
I'll practice that.
So we're coming up on the end of the session here.
Mhm.
Um, Unfortunately, we couldn't go over the other replay, but usually the second one is usually just in case things go super speedy. Usually
Yep.
we don't even get through one. All right. So in any case, going around the block here about all the things we want to work on. All right,
Mhm.
orbs. Make sure that we're discording anything we're shooting at. And then on top of that, discord just goes on whatever our team's trying to focus, and then if nothing of those two is happening, then we just maybe default it to the tanks, right?
Mhm.
Because that get kind of, they're the ones again who are taking the most damage. Therefore, when they're taking the most damage, having it on them is going to be the most beneficial. Now,
Mhm.
healing orb, right? We're swapping it on way too much, right? So how
Mhm.
it works instead is we're plopping it on a tank, and then if something else needs it, like they're low or they're critical or something like that, right? They need it, then we swap it over, right? And then as soon as they don't need it, we swap it back, right? They're our default target that we're keeping it on, right? On top of that, just make sure we're not going swap, 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 right? Swap, swap, swap. And only that when we could be shooting the entire time we're doing swap, swap, right? We could be shoot, shoot, swap, shoot, shoot, swap, shoot, shoot, swap, right? We just want to make sure we're not doing only orbing. And then we can also swap it. Like you feel free to do whatever you want in between fights as well, right?
Got
Um,
it.
Now Transcendence Usage, I saw. Did I see one or two?
2.
Two. All right, yeah. So
Mhm.
honestly, not too terrible. I don't
Mhm.
think that you had um, really any choice in the last one. The only thing I would say is just make sure at the very end of your trance that you're ending it and
Yeah.
going behind cover. So like we can go like trance, 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 help our team in the fight, help our team in the fight. But then with the last 1 second here, we just use it to get around the corner, right? So
That's a
that,
big note because I find myself out in the open all the time like, "Oh, now what?"
yep, exactly.
Mhm.
Um,
Okay.
and then besides that, nothing else. I'll probably put this one probably at the lowest, at least from what
Mhm.
I've seen. Um, then moving on to mechanics, tons of stuff in mechanics.
Mm.
Make sure that we're getting used to when to left click, when to right click. Right, we left click when we can actively see stuff, and when we cannot actively see stuff, we're charging up right clicks so that when we can see something, we're bursting it down. Right, so right clicks are happening very infrequently. Use it more often. Right, again, I don't want you to like go from like 20% all the way to 100%. I don't want you to be exclusively right clicking, but it just needs to happen more, right?
Mhm.
Um, and then on top of that, make sure we're aiming head level, right? Not aiming at the ground or at feet, because that's going to result in headshots, which just do a whole lot more. On top of that, aim where we know people are going to be, right? If we know he's going to be top right here, we're pre-aiming there so that we can shoot him. And then maybe I'm forgetting one thing there, but I am, then we'll come back to it. Oh, and then just make sure we're shooting more often, right? Just go shoot, shoot, shoot,
Yeah.
right? Make sure it's coming out, actually happening, right? So actions per
Yeah.
minute, making sure that we're being efficient with all our time, and then we can keep in mind as well that we can I guess I'll put this here as just like, you know, you can orb while shooting, right? Just make sure that we're not like just orbing or botting, right? That we're actually shooting
Yeah.
and doing things, because Zenyatta is a DPS character.
Mm-hmm.
Now moving on to positioning. Positioning, make sure that we're playing as a mid-range character. We don't prefer the close range, and we don't prefer long range. We prefer mid-range. We can play a long range, and we can play close range if we need to. But whenever it's an option, try to put yourself towards the mid-range so we can hit these shots better and easier, right? And be more efficient with them. Besides that, good usage of cover, besides just at the end of our ult. And then make sure that we... what was... I don't even know if there's anything else. So honestly, not too...
I
And
think those are the main things.
it was just playing closer, wasn't it? What was
Mm-hmm.
there?
The mid-range.
Oh, and then also just making sure that you're in line of sight of the enemy team, because a lot of times, it just kind of like we kind of had like super passive line of sight. Like it was kind of like
Yeah.
this, where like we would like be far away and we would just kind of like be doing this like while crouching.
Right.
It would just like be kind of like low line of sight bit, like whereas we could be just like, you know, seeing more things. Now you don't want to be super far away from cover, but just it's always a good idea to like when you're on DPS character to like give yourself some more things to shoot at least peeking it so you can see where people are at. That doesn't mean straying over here. It just might mean the difference between this, right, and this, right? Here it's basically it's taking you a very, very similar amount of time to duck around this corner, right? From this to this, right? It's very similar amount of time, except for this just gives us more line of sight, right? Now, if we peek this and we see, okay, we're shooting at this guy, then you can just, you know, make it so that only we can see this guy, so that way we're not just letting everybody shoot at us. But in general, if we're just looking for something to shoot at, be a little bit more open. All right.
Yeah.
Awareness, not too terrible, honestly. I don't think that there was very much. Make sure we're paying attention to kill feed and we're not panicking, right? But we talked about that last time, right? So just make sure we're paying attention to whether or not we're winning or losing. Besides that, was there anything else? We nothing with our HUD. Maybe pay attention to health bars, and that'll just dictate whether or not we're healing or not.
Right. Yeah,
Sorry,
I think
1
we
second.
covered a lot of it. Okay.
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay.
Sorry, someone just walked in the room there. So. Okay, sorry, I'll be right back. I have
Okay, no worries.
technically babysitting at the moment.
Oh, okay.
Siblings. All right, sorry, I'm back. So yeah, just to finish up real quick, because I have a crying baby sister in another room here. So yeah, then big thing is just going to be the playstyle of just the combination of a lot of different things that that it really adds up. Is just we want to get used to Zenyatta, right? So that kind of just drags stuff from all the different categories, like understanding your range, understanding when to left click, right click, understanding we should be shooting, knowing how to orb, right? Sorry to cough as well there. So then, yeah, so main point is playstyle. Second is mechanics. Third is probably going to be orbs. Fourth, we're going to put at... We'll just combine positioning and awareness there. And then last one is just not... I didn't really see much with it, and honestly it looked decently good. It's just going to be our ult charge, right? Do you have any questions?
Okay. No, I'm good. We're good.
All right. So, yep, I will get you your